For the first time since 1982, almost 40 years, 39 years, the Georgia Bulldogs are ranked number one in the Associated Press poll. It is also the first time they have ever been ranked unanimously during the season as the number one team in the country. It's not really surprising. That was the last time that was the case was 1982 in November, and it's the 16th time they've been the number one team in the country, but it's the first time they've been unanimous. And this is something we've been talking about a lot over on dogpost.com. Make sure you're going over there, signing up for the newsletter. I've got that right down below. Make sure you're clicking on that and signing up. And this is a great opportunity for the Dogs. I mean, they are the betting favorite now to win the national championship, even though they have a ton of guys missing. Blaylock, Pickens, Burton didn't play yesterday. Georgia's starting quarterback didn't play yesterday. Their starting left tackle got hurt during the game. Their starting safety, Chris Smith, got hurt during the game and didn't play. Didn't seem to make a lot of difference. And this is a Georgia team that looks better than everybody else. I mean, whether Alabama lost or not, Georgia, I think, probably was the best team coming out of Week 6. And probably since it seems like since Bama had so much trouble with Florida, which is the day Georgia played, I think, Carolina, that's when it looked to me like Georgia was the best team in the country. Because if you look, in the I'm getting confused. They played 24 quarters of football, and I think for the 4 quarters of the Clemson game, and maybe for about a quarter of the Carolina game, and maybe a quarter of the Auburn game, it's been in doubt who would win the game. And nobody else has played like that. I mean, when you look at Alabama and the way they played this season, obviously dominating a team in Miami that's really just not very good. I mean, can we say that about Clemson? At least Clemson's handled their business for the most part since the Georgia loss. The loss to NC State, yeah, but I mean, they've not been great. But that's not the only team Georgia's played. So now Florida's got 2 losses. Will they be ranked when Georgia gets to Jacksonville? Probably, because they're playing LSU, who seems to be quitting on the season. But it's a major accomplishment to be the number one team in the country in the season. Certainly, the goal is to be the number one team at the end of the season. But right now, we're in the middle of the season, and there's you can't win the national championship in October. So right now, being the number one team is where you want to be. I think to me, this past weekend changed a few things. I think the polling is correct. Georgia's number one. When you look at the rest of the poll, if Georgia wound up with this being the playoff, Iowa, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma, boy, probably really be excited with that, because you would not have any A-list teams like Alabama and Ohio State in there. But there's so much more to go in the Big Ten that you really can't count your chickens quite yet. And the other thing, too, is, you don't want to be 1985 Florida where you're the number one team in the country and then a week or two later you lose. So this week against Kentucky is a huge game. I mean, that sounds crazy, but what Stoops has done up there is really amazing. I mean, I've gone up to Kentucky for Georgia games since 1998, and they're not like they were then. I mean, the fans are passionate and they care and all this stuff, but this is a Kentucky team that every other year is kind of darting around with the top 15 team or playing around with the top 10 teams that are beating Florida more than once. Florida, Penn State, LSU. I mean, Kentucky couldn't do that in the past. Well, now they are, and they're trying to win the East straight up. I mean, they are not probably going to beat Georgia, but they can, because they have shown a lot of mental toughness and so forth. But if you're the number one team in the country, unanimously, which I think is what it should be. I mean, Iowa had some close calls. Obviously, the game against Penn State was certainly a close call. But they totally deserve to be number 2. Cincinnati, I mean, I would almost have Cincinnati ahead of them, but it's a beauty contest, and I know what Cincinnati can do. They are very difficult to deal with. And then Oklahoma, I think with Oklahoma, what's going on right now is we don't know what they're going to look like at the end of the year because they could be having a new quarterback. And that's the one thing to watch. I mean, Alabama's not going to change by the time the end of the season gets here. And I don't think that Ohio State necessarily will either. Georgia could be different than they are right now, which is, saying something. But Oklahoma certainly could be a different looking team because when you go from your starting quarterback and presumptive Heisman frontrunner to the backup who saves you against your arch rival, we can't know what the future will hold in this season for Oklahoma, etc. But this is a real opportunity for Kentucky to grab the reins in the conference. I mean, they could leave this coming weekend as the only undefeated team in this league. Now, I hate to be this way, but that's probably not going to happen, and Georgia's probably still going to have to deal with Alabama. Let's not be stupid here. Alabama is still the odds-on favorite to win the West. Some people may have as the betting favorite to still win the conference. I'm not sure I agree with that. But, whenever you're the number one team in the country, there's going to be a bullseye on you, but it's a tremendous marketing opportunity for Kirby and the Dogs. And it's a great time for Georgia fans. There's been a lot of frustration for a long, long time. In 2017, they were never the number one team in the country by the Associated Press. They were the number one team in the country by the College Football Playoff, which is more important. But the AP's been around a lot longer. I always use the AP. They come out a little later on Sundays. But I use the AP because it's been the number one thing for a long, long time. But there's a lot in the way still. I mean, you look at the Big Ten, and you've got Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, and Iowa. That thing is going to have to get settled out. You totally could have 2 Big Ten teams in this playoff. That's totally possible. And, we're just going to have to see how this progresses. But Georgia being the number one team in the country makes sense. It's what it is. It's the right call. I mean, they've got probably have the most wins against ranked teams this season with 4. Clemson, with 3. Clemson, I know y'all are saying it before me now, but you got the Clemson game, the Arkansas game, and then, of course, this past weekend with Auburn. They could have 4 this weekend with Kentucky, and they could have 5 in their first 7 games if the Gators are ranked, and they win. So Georgia's earned this. There's no doubt about it. But right now, I'm just looking at the teams ranked. They have wins right now over two teams that are ranked. Clemson's still not ranked in the AP. How about that? So they still have the win over Arkansas, who is ranked number 17 now with 2 losses. But they just look like the best team no matter who they've played. But we're only 6 games in this season, and to win the national championship through the SEC is going to take 15 wins, 15 games, maybe not 15 wins. So I think right now, if you're Georgia, you got to beat Kentucky. Like, that's a must-win game. Alabama did not have to beat Texas A&M, okay? But Georgia's going to have to beat Kentucky. This is as crucial a home game as Georgia's had in Kirby's time at Georgia. I mean, I don't know. It might be. I'm going to have to go back and look that up. But that they're number one. You got a bullseye, but it's a great opportunity. Don't go full Larry Munson here. I mean, this is a moment where Georgia fans should embrace being the bully. That's what you are. And you don't need to back down from being the number one team. This team's earned it. Whether you're talking about Stetson or Lab McConkey or Jordan or, any of those guys, Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter, N'Kobe Dean, Jamari. I mean, they don't have their starting right guard from the beginning of the season. This is going to be a different team. That there's not a dominant Ohio State or Alabama is going to hurt them in the legacy of this thing. But I think stepping one foot at a time here, this is about beating Kentucky over the weekend. You got College Game Day in town. You got SEC Nation, which nobody ever really talks about. But it's another big weekend in Athens. The number 1 Georgia Bulldogs will be in town. And you should definitely go celebrate these weekends because they are few and far between. And now Georgia's number 1 in the country. We'll see you on the website.